into it. Hey everybody, Dr. Grant here, and today we're going to be talking about the best supplements that I recommend to my ADHD patients currently. Now, this does change over time as new research is coming out, and also from my experience when I'm working with patients to see what tends to be working most effectively, especially when it comes to my ADHD patients. And so very first off, what I always think is really critical when it comes to thinking about the ADHD brain and what it really does need. And what I do find, one of the biggest things that we do need to stress a lot is gut health. And why this is so critical is because what I find is that the brain and the gut are very interconnected. And if the gut's not working optimally, guess what? Your brain is not going to work optimally as well. You might not be dealing with any digestive issues, but even still to that point, it all starts in the gut. And I always make sure when I'm working with every person that I see that we make sure that the gut is working optimally. So that way, when we do implement any kind of foods, nutrients, or any kind of supplementation, that it is going to work at its most optimal way because the gut is working optimally. Okay. So when we think about the gut, there's a few things that I tend to recommend pretty frequently when I'm running lots of different tests, but these are some of the more common ones. Now, there's lots of different variants. I'm not doing a huge exhaustive list because we could be here all day. I'm trying to just point out the ones that I tend to recommend more frequently that could be really helpful for you. So first off, what I find as a big problem is that a lot of people tend to have a lot of indigestion, acid reflux, and irritable bowel syndrome, especially amongst people with ADHD. And what I do find that seems to be really effective is really looking at the pH, stomach acidity pH, by looking at the urine pH and seeing to make sure that is actually at the adequate amount that we want to, where it's not too less or too high when it comes to your stomach acidity. So what I do like to recommend, if for someone who is more alkaline, not getting enough stomach acidity, it's good to add something like betaine, HCl, and pepsin. These are really great enzymes that helps with inflammation, but the HCl is helped with the stomach acidity, improve that, so it helps breaking down your foods. So that is a really one that I do recommend pretty frequently if it makes sense, if you tend to run on the side of being more where you have acid reflux, but you tend to run where you're not getting enough stomach acidity to help breaking down your food. So we'll add something like that. Another one that's really important is pancreatic enzymes. As we get older, our pancreas doesn't produce as well sufficiently enough of pancreatic enzymes. And so adding a pancreatic enzyme can be really helpful for breaking down your macronutrients, so your proteins, fats, and carbs, which guess what? Those are all very vital for not only for the body, but also especially for the brain. So you want to make sure that you are breaking down the foods that you're consuming on a daily basis, so it's feeding the brain and feeding the rest of the body. Okay. So then taking it to another level when it comes to what I think of that's really kind of important is looking at the functionality of the liver. The liver is very vital for many, many things. It deals with gluconeogenesis, which has to do with processing and building our sugar that we utilize, that our body uses. Also, our brain utilizes glucose. So it's very important that it's working optimally, but it also deals with regulating different hormones. It also deals with iron. It deals with, it's a main detoxifying organ. So if that is not working optimally, you're going to experience things such as fatigue, brain fog, focus issues, and so forth. So it's really vital to look at the liver to make sure it's working optimally. So when we run a lot of different tests, I'll make sure that this is working optimally. And one that I do recommend a lot over and over again is something called Livoplex. It's by Standard Process. I really like this brand because it particularly is food-based. And what I love about this is a lot of people don't like eating liver, but liver is really great to supporting liver. So if you like liver, I would just go ahead and eat liver specifically to support the liver. But if you don't like the taste of liver, like I don't, I'll usually take it in supplement form like Livoplex, and this has the great nutrients that's going to target and help supporting the liver. Now, taking it a little bit more in depth and more scientifically here is looking at more specifically the brain and the different neurotransmitters and amino acids that help support our brain activity, especially when it comes to focus, memory, and stuff like this, issues that a lot of people with ADHD tend to run into. And so the first one that I would say is looking at the very beginning of the dopamine pathway is phenylethylamine. Now, that's a mouthful. lot of times I can't even say it correctly because it's such a mouthful, but phenylethylamine is very beginning. It's an excitatory neurotransmitter that helps build dopamine. And usually what I find as one of the big problems, especially when we run a lot of these different tests, is we find that the amino acid phenylalanine, or more specifically PA, is actually low. So typically I'll add DL-phenylalanine to helping supporting and improving your PA levels, but more importantly is helping the dopamine pathway that's going to help with improving motivation, memory, and focus. Okay. So that's like really one I probably recommend. I'd say 70% of the time when we're running these different tests. So it's a very common one that I tend to recommend. Now, on top of that is there's some other things, just like this patient, when we ran their test, is that we saw that their tyrosine levels were low and their dopamine levels were low. And so going back to the pathway here, tyrosine is what does help build L-DOPA, which then L-DOPA helps build dopamine. So this person had low both tyrosine and also dopamine. So I do really like this one. I don't tend to usually do a combination supplement just because there's usually might be a few things in the ingredients that might be contradicting of what I want to improve. But in this case, this one doesn't have very many, but usually I see this as a common pattern where I'll both see tyrosine and dopamine as an issue. So Dopa Boost not only has N-acetyltyrosine, but mecunopurines, which is L-DOPA, which helps improve dopamine levels. But it also has vitamin B6, the activated form, which is very vital for a lot of these different steps. When it comes to tyrosine, to L-DOPA, to dopamine, L-DOPA to dopamine, it requires vitamin B6. So that's why I really like this. I also like the fact that it has green tea extract, so L-theanine, which also does help with dopamine as well. So I do really like this brand, and that's why I do recommend it, because I like the combo. Not just because I don't have any sponsorship with any supplement company. I know a lot of people think that I am tied with any kind of sponsorships. I haven't done any sponsorships on this video, on my channel at all. I just use what works and what's been working with our patients. And I just like this combination, how it's broken down, and it's helped a lot of my patients and clients when they have deficiencies in these specific areas. Now, the next one I would say comes down to more the serotonin pathway. So serotonin can be also an issue with people with ADHD. In fact, pretty frequently. I'd say probably about 50+% of the time, we do see issues with serotonin. And you probably maybe even recommended, taking an antidepressant along with your ADHD medication. So that's very common. We do see that happen a lot. And so with this patient, their serotonin levels were low, and also the breakdown of serotonin, which is 5-HIAA. And what I usually will recommend to help supporting the serotonin pathway, there's a couple things here. One, is looking at tryptophan is kind of the very beginning. And so I'll sometimes recommend L-tryptophan. It also helps a lot with not only with the mood, but also helping with sleep. So it's really good to incorporate something like that, but also 5-HTP, because 5-HTP is directly helps support and build serotonin levels. Okay. So I do like these two when it comes to looking at that, because not only is going to help with the mood, it's also going to help with the stress as well as with your sleep, which do impact ADHD people significantly. The other thing I also recommend is L-theanine. I love L-theanine because it not only does it help the serotonin pathway, but also helps the dopamine pathway and helping and supporting that. So I do recommend L-theanine pretty often. I would say, probably 90% of the time, I tend to recommend L-theanine. Now, another situation is when we're looking at a couple other different neurotransmitters that could not be low, but actually elevated. So this does happen pretty often, more often than you think, is that dopamine levels will be elevated. And then you'll see like epinephrine may be low, which has a lot to do with managing our stress. And when I see this happen, along with also maybe even serotonin levels being high, you're going to feel more agitated, stressed out completely. And especially if you're taking a medication like Adderall, that's going to spike your dopamine. And if you're taking like an SSRI, an antidepressant, that can also make it worse by spiking it. And in this case, this patient was taking both, and they were feeling very agitated and stressed on their medication. Well, no duh, because they already had elevated levels and it was just making things worse. So when I see this, there's a few things that I do like or recommend. One, we have to make sure that they're talking to the prescribing doctor about this, to either start cutting back on the dosages or be using a different medication that's not going to increase this and make it worse. Because it's what we call serotonin syndrome. And it's a very real problem. I've seen it firsthand multiple times where someone who's put on an SSRI and they hit serotonin syndrome. And it's not a pretty picture. You feel agitated, stressed, relentless, restlessness. And so those are things that you really need to keep an eye on and be aware of when you're starting to take these types of medications. And so things I'd like to do is obviously, they need to talk to their prescribing doctor about starting to come back or doing a different medication, but to help kind of support this as they have these elevated levels, because they already were true even without the medications, is adding something like rhodiola is a really good one to helping managing serotonin as well as dopamine when they're elevated, when they're too high. L-theanine is also really great. I love now you probably were like, well, I thought you use L-theanine when it's low. Well, it's both really grateful. It's great for when you take it when you have low levels of dopamine and low levels of serotonin, but also when they are elevated. It's a great equalizer, and that's why I like L-theanine, because it can help in both case scenarios. The other thing also I love to kind of incorporate is adding some kind of B complexes, because sometimes with the serotonin or even the dopamine, it's not being broken down. It's not being utilized very effectively. And you could see right here, I know it's kind of small, but you can see vitamin B2, vitamin B3. There's a lot of different B vitamins that help break down the process of serotonin to be utilized for things like melatonin or dopamine to be broken down to norepinephrine and epinephrine. But it requires a lot of different B vitamins. And so sometimes I'll see patients where we'll sometimes even run their micronutrient test and see that they have certain key B vitamins, more specifically, that are specific for cofactors to help in breaking down those. So this is why it's so vital by looking at testing to see a better picture versus it just because you have elevated serotonin levels. Is it because there's certain key vitamins that help break it down that are deficient that you need to be incorporating? Okay. So once we did this, definitely a night and day experience for this person. And they did not feel agitated, stress, and they can actually focus finally. They can actually sleep better at night because we're able to start tapering down the medication and then switching to a more of a natural, more gentle approach to things so that he could function more properly. Now, talking about norepinephrine and epinephrine, these are two broken down, with the dopamine pathway. And so this is very common to see when they are definitely both low, because it helps with managing stress. So ones that I do, again, is L-theanine is a really great one that I love using that can also help with both norepinephrine and epinephrine. There's a few other things, but this is one I definitely come to use a lot that can be really effective for helping improving these levels. Even just using like green tea, which has L-theanine in it. If you love tea, that's another great thing that you can start incorporating. Now, when it also, some of the things that are really important to look at, some of the supplements that best ones that I use currently that are helping my HD patients, is looking at, especially with adults with ADHD, their chronic fatigue situation, which is impacting their motivation drive throughout the day. And this is usually what I find. It's usually has to do with cortisol. And so just like this patient, their cortisol readings were really low throughout the entire day. And they had low energy and they couldn't focus throughout the day. And usually the simplest way of actually fixing this in the short term is adding like something adrenal desiccated or adrenal support, anything that has adrenal desiccation in it. But you only want to do it for about 3 months. You don't want your body to get adapted and used to it. So I usually only recommend about for 3 months to just revitalize the adrenals. And then we work on other things to eliminating stressors in their life. Because usually it's just trying to eliminate stressors in the life. They're going to help improve the adrenals over time. And that's going to be more of the better long-term effective way, as well as improving certain foods and nutrients and other lifestyle changes to help improve with that. So the other thing, I would say these ones are more common amongst adults that are a bit older, like in their 40s to 50s, that I'll see this more common. Not when you're young. I don't see it as often. I mean, it does happen, but I see it just more frequently with people who are 40 years or older that are having issues with memory, focus. If they have ADHD, same thing, is that we'll see that their choline levels will be low. So I'll add something like phosphatidylcholine, and this can help with both with memory and focus, but also even can have low levels of serine. So if they have low levels of serine, I'll add something like phosphatidylserine to help improve with that. And this can definitely help with the memory and focus issue significantly. So it's really important to understand that, these are very common ones that I do use, that are the best ones that I've seen time and time again that are helping my patients with ADHD getting results. But it only happened because we did investigative work. And investigative work is really important to do firsthand, to do in lab work to understand really what is the big picture of the problem versus just going at it blindly and just trying random bunch of different supplements. Just because someone else got results doesn't mean the same. Not one person is the same. And what I will say also on top of that is that supplements is just the first initial stone. It's not the full answer because it does help change the biochemistry. But what's going to be the long-term sustainable solution is actually more the proper foods and nutrients we need to be implementing, especially when you find the deficiencies and imbalances that are going on there, but also important lifestyle changes, improving your sleep, eliminating stress in your life, improving like foods, improving, um, exercise. Like those are like really key factors that need to be implemented and to being consistent with to having more consistent results and outcomes. And supplements are a great way to just get things going, but it is over time. I like people to start decreasing their amount of supplements and actually implementing foods as their medicine, as well as lifestyle changes. So, I mean, if you would like to find out this information for your own ADHD and finally actually tackle your ADHD, I'd love to help you out. So what I'm offering is an opportunity to either book a consultation with me or one of my health experts, ADHD experts. Normally, it's a 45 minutes, one-on-one personalized strategy session. And, it's valued at $750. And you also get access, if you do purchase today, access to our nutrition and lifestyle tracking app that we use with all our patients and clients that work with us. It's a $300 value. And then on top of that, if you do purchase today, you get access to my ADHD health course. That's a $597 value. And you get all of that. And the whole value is $1,647. But for today, you could get it for $297. And so all you got to do is just click on the link in the description below. Once you click on the link, it will take you to this page right here. You'll purchase. Then this is very important. People forget to actually book their time. They'll purchase, but they forget to book their time. So it's really critical. You got to hit book now. It'll take you to this page. Now it's very important. You are going to select your practitioner. So either with me or with one of our other health experts. I'm booked up much further out. So if you want to be seen sooner, you could definitely see one of our health experts that have probably sooner availability. So it's up to you. But you pick and you select the date and time. Once you've done that, fill out your information. And when you do select your date and time, make sure we do require that if you have a significant other or spouse to be there, because this helps us to really get an outside perspective of that person's challenges, because the spouse or the significant other can give us a lot more input into the challenges, because it's a very important decision when it comes to your ADHD health. So please keep that in mind when you're booking your time. We do require that a spouse or significant other is there if you do have that person. And then you'll come to this landing page. It's very important to make sure to check for 2 emails, one to confirm your appointment, and then the second is to activate your Practice Better account. This is how you get access to the nutrition and lifestyle app that we use with our patients and clients. Also, to be able to fill out the client questionnaire, which is very thorough and in-depth. This is how we determine what labs are going to be the most important for you once we get a chance to look over your medical history. So please fill that out before the appointment so we have a chance to look over that. And then, of course, make sure to, if you have any past standard labs, now it's just for standard labs, I would say, I know it says 2 years, but actually it's more just in the past year are going to be more relevant. It's just in the past year. But it's not a requirement. But if you have them, you can upload them into Practice Better, and then make sure to block out 45 minutes to an hour. Sometimes we might go an hour if you have more questions. Show up early. And I usually give you about 10 minutes leeway. If there's no show on that 10 minutes, we give you lots of reminders, text, and stuff like that to make sure you show up. But if there's no show in 10 minutes, we give you 10-minute grace period. If not, then we mark it as a no-show. All right. So thank you guys so much for attending. If you're interested, you want to finally tackle your ADHD, then go ahead and click on that link in the description below to book that appointment. And I'll see you guys all in the next live stream. Thanks. Bye.